Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to jump into a deep dive on something pretty amazing?
I am.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're talking about robotic insect pollinators.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Yeah,
It sounds like science fiction,
totally.
but it's real.
And it's happening right now.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So for those of you listening who are interested in the future of agriculture,
Yeah.
this is something you're going to want to pay attention to.
Yeah.
We're looking at some research out of MIT that's really, I don't know, groundbreaking, I think is the word.
It is. It's really exciting to think about the future of ag and how this could change things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've all seen the headlines, right, about declining bee populations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So maybe you can kind of start us off and tell us why that's such a big deal.
Sure. So, bees and other natural pollinators,
Right.
they play a crucial role in, well, all of our food production. I mean, most of it.
Without them, we'd be in a lot of trouble when it comes to our food supply.
Like, seriously?
Yeah, it's pretty serious.
Wow. Okay. So that's why, I guess, researchers at MIT are trying to find solutions, right?
That's right. And robotic insects could be a big part of that.
So these tiny robots would, like, actually take on the job of pollinating crops.
You got it.
I mean, that sounds like something straight out of, like, a movie.
I know it does, right? But it's getting closer to reality all the time.
So, okay, I'm picturing, like, all these tiny robots buzzing around fields of crops.
Yeah.
How do they actually do the pollination part?
That's where bio-inspired engineering comes in. These robots aren't just copying the look of insects.
Yeah.
They're actually replicating the mechanics of flight
Wow.
and pollen transfer.
Okay.
So the newest design has 4 wings instead of 8,
Oh, interesting.
which might seem counterintuitive.
Well, yeah. I would think more wings, more power.
Well, not necessarily. You see, the 4-wing design, it mimics the flapping motion of certain bee species,
Okay.
and it actually creates these tiny vortices.
Vortices.
Yeah, basically like tiny whirlwinds of air
Oh, cool.
that actually enhance pollen pickup and transfer.
So it's like more efficient even though there are fewer wings.
Exactly. Plus, fewer wings means less mechanical stress,
Oh, okay.
and that translates into longer flight times.
So how long can these things fly for?
Oh, over 1,000 seconds.
1,000 seconds.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
pretty impressive.
But, okay, how do you make sure these robots don't, like, just drift off?
Yeah.
Like, how do they find the crops they need to pollinate?
So right now, they're primarily being used in controlled environments,
Oh.
like greenhouses or vertical farms.
Vertical farms, I've heard of those, but I don't really know what they are.
Sure. So imagine an indoor farm,
Okay.
high tech,
Mm-hmm.
where crops are grown in these stacked layers. It's almost like a skyscraper of agriculture.
Wow, okay.
Right.
Yeah. So that's where, like, robotic pollination could really be useful.
Exactly. It gives you this like really precise control over the pollination process.
Wow, precision pollination. That's like taking it to a whole new level.
It is. It really is.
So it sounds like the robots, they're not, like, out in the wild just yet.
No, not yet. Full autonomy in outdoor settings is still a little ways off.
What are the challenges there?
Well, researchers are working on like equipping these robots with really advanced sensors
Mhm.
and navigation systems so they can pinpoint flowers,
Okay.
assess their pollination needs, and navigate more unpredictable environments.
Well, because obviously out in the real world, there's, like, wind and all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. It's way more complex than a controlled environment.
And obviously all this tech requires power, right?
Yeah.
How are they dealing with, like, battery life, especially with these longer flight times?
That's one of the big challenges. They need to develop batteries that are powerful enough to support, extended flights,
Right.
but they also need to be lightweight enough so the robots can still fly.
Makes sense. It sounds like there's a lot of research and development still to be done.
Oh, definitely. This is just the beginning.
So what are some of the other things scientists are looking into with this technology?
One area that's really fascinating is AI integration. Imagine robots that can actually learn. Learn and adapt their pollination strategies based on real-time conditions.
Wow, robots that can learn.
It's pretty amazing.
So what kind of data would they be collecting, and how would that inform their strategies?
Well, they could gather data on flower location,
Uh-huh.
pollen availability,
Right.
even weather conditions,
Okay.
and then use all that information to optimize their routes
Oh, wow.
and pollination techniques to make sure they're as efficient as possible.
So we're talking about robots that are constantly learning and improving their pollination skills.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that is mind-blowing.
It is.
And is this research, is it all happening at MIT, or are other people working on this too?
Oh, definitely not just MIT. This is a whole wave of innovation happening in robotic pollination.
Wow, so there's a whole ecosystem of solutions emerging.
That's right, and we're just getting started.
Okay, well, this deep dive just keeps getting more interesting.
Let's explore some of those other projects,
Perfect.
shall we?
Let's do it. So we're seeing this whole, ecosystem of robotic pollination solutions emerging.
We are.
Okay, so what other projects are out there besides what's happening at MIT?
Well, one really interesting one is it's called Stickbug, and it's happening over at West Virginia University.
Stickbug.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's specifically designed for precision pollination in greenhouses.
Hold on. I thought we were talking about robotic insects.
We are.
But stickbug, that doesn't sound very insect-like.
Well, it's still a robot,
Okay.
and it's still designed to pollinate.
Okay, but why is it called stickbug?
Well, it has 6 arms.
6 arms. Yeah.
That's a lot of arms.
It is.
So what's the deal with the 6 arms? Like, is it going to juggle the pollen?
Well, not exactly juggling, but it's all about targeted efficiency.
Okay.
Stickbug uses a combination of computer vision and robotic manipulation
Okay.
to identify and pollinate individual flowers.
So it's not just like spreading pollen randomly.
Right.
It's like making sure each flower gets the attention it needs.
That's exactly it.
Wow, this feels significant.
It is.
Are we like at a turning point in agriculture
It's possible.
with all this tech, all these new approaches?
Yeah, it's exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is.
And then there's Harvard's RoboBee project, too, which is focusing on autonomous microrobots.
RoboBee.
Yeah.
Okay, so how is RoboBee different? Like, what's its specialty?
Well, the RoboBee project is all about miniaturization.
Okay.
So these robots are even smaller than the MIT robots we were talking about earlier.
Wow, even smaller.
Yeah, they're tiny. So what can they do? Like, can they still pollinate?
They can,
Okay.
but they also have potential applications beyond pollination.
Like what?
Things like environmental monitoring, for example.
Oh, interesting.
So imagine these micro-robots collecting data on things like air quality or soil conditions.
Wow.
It could give us a much deeper understanding of what's happening in the environment.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
Like all these different applications.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, though, what are the long-term implications, you know?
What do you mean?
Like, what happens if we start relying on robots for this really crucial natural process? Like, is that a good thing?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And it's one we need to be thinking carefully about.
Okay.
While robotic pollination offers this amazing potential solution to the problems we're facing.
Right, with declining bee populations and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We really need to be carefully weighing the potential benefits against any unintended consequences.
So it's not just about creating these cool robots.
Right.
It's about making sure they actually fit into the bigger picture of our ecosystems.
Exactly. And we need to be really careful to avoid unintended consequences for natural pollinators as well.
Okay.
For example, if we become too reliant on robotic pollinators,
Yeah.
could that actually lead to further decline in natural pollinator populations?
That's kind of like a paradox, right? We're trying to solve a problem, but we could end up making it worse.
Exactly.
So what could be done to avoid that?
Well, we need to make sure that the development and deployment of this technology goes hand in hand with really strong conservation efforts.
For real bees and stuff?
Yes, absolutely. Things like protecting and restoring natural habitats, reducing pesticide use,
Okay.
and promoting biodiversity are all essential.
So it's not an either situation.
Right.
It's about finding ways for technology and nature to work together.
That's the goal.
Okay, I like
And that
that.
requires a more holistic approach, one that takes into account the interconnectedness of ecosystems and thinks about the long-term impact of our actions.
That makes sense.
Remember, we're not just talking about plants and robots here. We're talking about this complex web of relationships.
Between all sorts of things.
Exactly.
Plants, insects, the environment.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Okay, so back to the research itself.
Sure.
We were talking about all these different approaches to robotic pollination. What else is out there besides the MIT project and Stickbug?
Well, while MIT is focusing on, these aerial robots that mimic insect flight,
Right.
other researchers are kind of tackling pollination from different angles.
Okay.
For instance, over at West Virginia University, they've developed a robot called Stickbug.
Wait, stickbug. I thought we already talked about stickbug.
Oh, right. Sorry. I meant to say there's another project that's taking a different approach.
Okay, got it.
This one focuses on a robot with 6 arms.
6 arms?
I know, it's a lot.
So what's the point of having 6 arms for pollination?
Well, it's all about precision and control.
Okay.
Each arm on this robot has a tiny little sensor and a delicate manipulator, allowing it to identify and pollinate individual flowers with incredible accuracy.
So it's not just spreading pollen, it's like making sure each flower gets exactly the right amount.
That's a great way to put it.
That's amazing.
It is, isn't it?
Like personalized pollination.
You could say that.
Wow, that level of precision is really something.
It is.
It seems like robotic pollination could totally revolutionize agriculture, especially in controlled environments like those greenhouses and vertical farms we talked about.
Absolutely. And the applications go way beyond just food crops, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, imagine using robotic pollinators to help preserve endangered plant species, for example.
Okay.
Or to assist in the restoration of damaged ecosystems.
Wow, that's really cool.
It is.
The possibilities seem kind of endless.
They really do.
But are there any downsides, like any concerns or challenges with this technology that we haven't really talked about yet?
Well, there are always challenges when you're developing new technology.
Sure.
And one of the big ones with robotic pollination is making sure these robots can actually operate effectively in real-world conditions.
Okay, what do you mean by real-world conditions?
Well, think about a farm or a forest.
Okay.
They're complex environments, constantly changing.
Right.
You've got wind gusts, obstacles, different light conditions, unpredictable weather patterns.
Yeah, it's not like a nice controlled greenhouse.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do the robots deal with all that?
Well, researchers are working on developing sophisticated sensors and algorithms
Right.
that allow the robots to perceive their surroundings,
Okay.
make decisions, and adapt to those changing conditions.
So it's not just about building robots. It's about building robots that can, like, think.
You could say that.
That's pretty wild.
It is.
Okay, so what about the future? Like, way down the line. Could robotic pollination, like, completely change how we grow food?
It's definitely possible.
What would that look like?
Imagine a world where precision robotic pollination is, like the standard,
Okay.
enabling us to grow more food, using fewer resources, and with a much smaller environmental footprint.
So less reliance on pesticides, less water usage, things like that.
Exactly.
That sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, there are always trade-offs.
Right.
We need to think carefully about the ethical considerations, too.
Okay, like what?
Well, earlier we talked about the potential impact on natural pollinator populations.
Yeah.
But there are other things to consider as well.
Like what?
We need to be mindful of the potential economic impacts, for example,
Okay.
making sure that this technology doesn't create or exacerbate inequalities.
So, like, making sure everyone benefits.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
And we also need to address concerns about data privacy and security.
Oh, right, because these robots are collecting data.
They are.
And they're connected to networks.
Right.
So there's potential for that data to be misused.
There is. And we need to be proactive about addressing those concerns.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's not just about the technology itself.
Yeah.
It's about how we use it and how we ensure that it's used responsibly.
Right. For the benefit of everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, well, this has been a really amazing conversation.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from the mechanics of these robots to the ethical implications for society as a whole.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is.
And it's just the beginning.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to add? Like any final thoughts for our listeners?
I would just say that the future of robotic pollination is full of potential, but it's also full of unknowns.
That's true of pretty much any new technology, right?
It is, but I think it's especially true in this case because we're dealing with something so fundamental to life on Earth, pollination.
Right. It affects our food supply, our ecosystems, everything.
Exactly.
So what can our listeners do?
I would encourage them to stay informed, ask questions, and engage in conversations about the future of this technology.
Okay, that sounds like good advice.
And don't be afraid to think critically about both the potential benefits and the potential risks.
Right, because technology isn't always good or bad.
Exactly.
It's how we use it that matters.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, well, on that note, I think we should wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into the world of robotic insect pollinators.
Sounds good to me.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve even deeper into the potential applications and implications of this groundbreaking technology. All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. We're wrapping up our deep dive into the world of robotic insect pollinators today.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this final part,
Yeah.
I thought maybe we could, I don't know, sort of shift gears a little
Okay, yeah.
and talk about, like, the really...
Sure. Like, where could this all be headed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We've talked about the potential impacts for agriculture and the environment, but
Right.
what about, like, the even bigger picture? How could this change the world, decades from now?
That's a great question. I think one area where robotic pollination could have a truly massive impact
Okay.
is in the realm of food security.
Food security, okay.
As the global population keeps growing, we're going to need to find ways to produce more food,
Hmm.
more efficiently, and with a smaller environmental footprint.
So using less land, less water,
Exactly.
fewer pesticides, all of that.
Right. And I think robotic pollination could be a key part of making that happen.
How so?
Well, imagine a future where, like, swarms of robotic pollinators are working side by side with human farmers,
Okay, yeah.
making sure that crops are always effectively pollinated,
Right.
no matter what the weather's like or whether there's been habitat loss for natural pollinators.
That would be a game changer, especially in places where, they're already struggling to grow enough food.
Absolutely. It could help stabilize agricultural yields, reduce food waste, and make fresh produce more accessible to people all over the world.
Wow, that's a really powerful thought. Like, this technology could actually help fight hunger.
I think it has the potential to do just that.
Okay, so we've talked about the, like, humanitarian implications, which are huge.
Yeah.
But what about the economics of it all? Like, how could this impact jobs and industries?
That's an important consideration. It's pretty likely that as robotic pollination becomes more widespread,
Yeah.
it'll lead to some shifts in the agricultural workforce.
So some jobs might be lost, but others might be created.
Right. We'll probably need more skilled technicians to design, maintain, and operate these robotic systems.
Okay, so it could create new opportunities in fields like robotics and AI.
Exactly. And it's not just about agriculture either. I think robotic pollination could have a ripple effect across a bunch of different industries.
Like what?
Horticulture, forestry, even conservation.
Oh, interesting. So we talked about environmental impacts earlier, but could these robots also be used to, like, help the environment?
I think so. Imagine using robotic pollinators to help preserve endangered plant species, for example.
Oh, right, because they could be programmed to pollinate very specific plants.
Exactly. Or you could use them to help reforest areas that have been damaged by wildfires or deforestation.
So they could help restore biodiversity and make ecosystems stronger.
Exactly. It's pretty exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is. But I also keep thinking back to something you said earlier.
What got?
You mentioned that the future of robotic pollination is full of potential,
Mm.
but also full of unknowns.
Yeah, that's true. We're still in the very early stages of this technology, and there's a lot we don't know yet.
So, like, what are the big questions we should be asking ourselves? Like, as this technology keeps developing, what do we need to be thinking about?
Well, one of the biggest questions is how do we make sure this technology is used responsibly and ethically?
Okay, so not just focusing on the cool factor, but making sure it's actually good for the world.
Exactly. We need to be thinking about the potential impact on natural pollinators,
Right.
the risks of creating monocultures, and the importance of preserving biodiversity.
So making sure we don't accidentally make things worse while we're trying to make them better.
Right. And we also need to think about the social and economic impacts,
Yeah.
making sure that this technology benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Like making sure it doesn't lead to more inequality.
Exactly.
That's a really important point.
And another big question is how do we balance the benefits of robotic pollination with the need to protect and restore natural ecosystems?
Because we don't want to become completely reliant on robots, right?
Right. It's not about choosing one over the other. It's about finding ways for them to work together.
So investing in both technological innovation, A&D, in conservation efforts.
Exactly. We need to protect natural habitats, reduce pesticide use, and promote biodiversity.
It's like a two-pronged approach.
Exactly. We need to be smart about how we use technology to address the challenges we're facing.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. It feels like we've barely scratched the surface of this topic, but it's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's such a fascinating and rapidly evolving field.
So to our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about robotic pollination,
Yeah.
I definitely encourage you to keep digging. There's so much more to discover, and it's changing all the time.
Stay curious, ask questions, and be part of the conversation as this technology continues to develop.
That's great advice. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of robotic insect pollinators. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those minds buzzing.